There is one psychological trick so dark, so dangerously subtle, that if someone uses it on you, they can control your choices, shape your emotions, and rewrite your reality, while you still believe you're in control. And the scariest part is that you won't even notice it happening. Imagine a hidden doorway inside the human mind, a doorway beneath confidence, ego, fear, and desire. A doorway that, if someone learns how to open, gives them access to your emotions, your reactions, your decisions, and even the story you tell yourself about who you are. This doorway isn't logic. It isn't intelligence. It isn't strength. It's the ego, the exact place where fear and desire collide. In today's episode of Truth, we expose the darkest psychological tactic manipulators use to take control of you without force, without threats, and without you realizing the moment it begins. This isn't a tutorial. This is a warning, a guide to defend your mind from the people who know how to twist it. Because if you don't understand this trick, someone might already be using it on you. Every psychological manipulation begins long before the victim realizes anything is happening. A skilled manipulator doesn't attack your strengths. They search for the empty, quiet spaces inside you, the parts that feel unseen, unheard, or unvalidated. Maybe it's the fear of being ignored, the desire to feel valued, a wound from the past, or a deep craving to be recognized. Manipulators don't need your history. They only need to watch how you react. They observe your micro-expressions, your hesitation, the way your eyes light up when someone finally notices you. So they begin with something subtle, attention. Not too much, not too obvious. Just enough to make your subconscious whisper, "Finally, someone sees me." That moment is not kindness, it's strategy. It's the first pressure point. Then comes the test. A simple, carefully crafted line. "You're different, but I don't think people truly understand you, do they?" If that line pulls you in, even slightly, they now know exactly where the door is. And once they find the door, they don't open it. They let you open it from the inside. Your subconscious begins to link them with comfort, validation, and emotional safety. And the moment that connection forms, you give them something far more powerful than trust. You give them psychological access, access that allows them to reshape your behavior, your decisions, and eventually, your identity. This is only the beginning. The darkest part comes next. Manipulators never rely on force. Force is loud. Force is obvious. Force makes you run. They use something far more elegant. Praise, not genuine praise, but strategic, calculated praise designed to bypass your logic and land straight inside your subconscious. Here's the truth most people never realize. The ego doesn't fall for compliments. It falls for the compliments it secretly wishes were true. A manipulator studies you carefully. They look for the insecurity you hide, the ambition you're afraid to say out loud, the part of you that feels underestimated. Then they build the perfect line. A line that sounds like a compliment, but actually works like a psychological key. "You have something rare. I just don't think the world sees it yet." That sentence is not praise. It's a hook. It creates a specific emotional reaction, a mix of hope and longing. Hope that someone finally recognizes you, and longing for them to say more, and that's exactly the point. The praise is intentionally incomplete. They give you just enough to spark desire, but not enough to satisfy it. Your brain enters a loop, seeking more validation from the same source. That created the craving in the first place. This is called intermittent reinforcement, the same psychological pattern that keeps people addicted to toxic relationships, high-risk gambling, and unpredictable affection. You don't become attached to the person, you become attached to the feeling. They allow you to chase. That's why manipulators never give constant praise. Constant praise loses power, but praise given at random, praise given when you least expect it, praise given right after emotional withdrawal, that becomes a weapon. It makes your nervous system depend on them as the source of emotional relief. And once your emotions depend on someone, your decisions follow. Your boundaries blur. Your self-worth shifts. You begin to adjust your behavior. not to express yourself, but to earn the next hit of validation. And the manipulator knows it. They feel it. They see it. This is how praise, one of the most innocent human behaviors, becomes a subtle form of control. And it sets the stage for the next, far darker phase of the manipulation cycle. By the time praise becomes a psychological hook, something much deeper begins to shift inside you. Quietly, slowly, silently, you don't wake up one morning suddenly controlled. Control doesn't arrive like a storm. It arrives like a change in temperature, so gradual that you adjust without realizing it. A manipulator's real goal isn't to win your trust. Trust can be broken. Trust can be questioned. Their goal is far more dangerous, to become the lens through which you see yourself. Once your ego links them to validation, your mind begins rearranging itself around their presence. You start paying attention to their reactions, you start adjusting your tone, you start filtering your words, you start seeking their approval, not because you admire them, but because something inside you now feels incomplete without it. And this is the moment you begin losing yourself, the moment your identity subtly shifts. To survive inside the emotional world they've built around you, it doesn't feel like control, it feels like connection, like understanding, like closeness. But make no mistake, the difference between connection and control is who you become in the process. A genuine connection expands you. You feel more alive, more real, more yourself. Manipulation contracts you. You shrink, you fade, you soften your edges to fit their expectations. The manipulator now performs their most important move. They stop the praise, not completely. Just enough to create emotional confusion. You start replaying conversations. You question what you said wrong. You wonder what changed. You feel a rising tension that pushes you to seek their approval again. This is the tipping point. Your emotional balance no longer depends on your inner world. It depends on their responses. And once that happens, they no longer need to control you directly. You begin controlling yourself in ways that serve them. You walk on eggshells. You try harder. You give more. You justify their distance. You forgive their silence. You chase the version of them that existed only in the beginning. Psychologists call this self-abandonment, and it is the true core of psychological manipulation. You don't lose yourself because they took something from you. You lose yourself because you slowly stopped protecting the parts of you that matter. And now, you're ready for the stage most people never escape, the withdrawal phase. Once a manipulator knows you're emotionally invested, they enter the most brutal stage of the cycle, withdrawal. They don't disappear completely. They don't reject you openly. They simply pull back, little by little, quietly, strategically. Not enough for you to confront them, but enough for your nervous system to panic. Silence becomes their weapon. Distance becomes their signal. Uncertainty becomes your prison. Your mind tries to make sense of the shift. Did I say something wrong? Did I disappoint them? Why do they feel so far away? You replay conversations. You overanalyze every word. You twist yourself into emotional knots, trying to figure out how to bring back the version of them who once made you feel seen. That's the trap. You're not trying to reconnect with them. You're trying to reconnect with the feeling they manufactured at the start. This emotional withdrawal creates a psychological tension, so strong that your brain begins seeking relief, and only they can provide it. So when they finally return with a small gesture, a soft word, a warm tone, your entire nervous system lights up with relief. This relief feels like love, like validation, like safety, but it's actually a conditioned response, no different from the way the mind of an addict reacts to a long-awaited hit. A manipulator doesn't need to punish you. Your own anxiety does the work. They don't need to demand compliance. Your fear of losing them ensures you comply on your own. This stage is where most people break internally, not because of what the manipulator does, but because of what it makes them do to themselves. You silence your instincts. You dim your emotions. You ignore your discomfort. You sacrifice your boundaries. You apologize for feelings you were never allowed to express. You shapeshift into a version of yourself, designed to avoid another emotional withdrawal. This is the moment a manipulator achieves full influence, when you become the one maintaining the connection, even when it hurts you. And once they reach this point, they shift into the final phase, the phase where your mind doesn't just follow them, it depends on them. When emotional withdrawal has reshaped your behavior, a manipulator no longer needs to pull strings, because you've started pulling them yourself. In this final stage, influence becomes invisible. It doesn't feel like control. It feels like need. A quiet, heavy need that sits in your chest and whispers that losing this person would mean losing a part of yourself. And that's the illusion they rely on. You begin to measure your value through their reactions. You feel anxious when they're distant, relieved when they approve, guilty when you set boundaries, fearful when you think of walking away. Your inner compass, the voice that once guided your decisions, now orbits around their emotions. This is where the manipulator becomes the center of your psychological universe. Not because they earned it, but because they engineered it. You start to notice how your personality has shifted. You're quieter, more careful, more apologetic, more dependent on reassurance. You hide parts of yourself to keep the peace. You tolerate discomfort to avoid their silence. You accept treatment you would never accept from anyone else. And the most heartbreaking part, you think this is your choice. It's not, it's conditioning, carefully layered over time, until your mind confuses anxiety with attachment and confusion with connection. But here's the truth. The manipulator doesn't want you to know. Control built through fear and ego is fragile. It shatters the moment you wake up and see the pattern for what it is. Because once you recognize the cycle, the praise, the validation, the withdrawal, the confusion, the dependency, you snap back into yourself. You begin to hear your own voice again. You feel the boundaries you abandoned. You remember who you were before your identity twisted around someone else's approval. Awareness breaks the spell. Not anger, not revenge, not confrontation, just awareness. And once the spell breaks, their influence collapses like a shadow at sunrise. Not because you fought them, but because you finally saw them clearly. This is the moment you reclaim your mind. This is the moment you return to yourself. This is the moment the cycle ends. Now that you've seen the pattern, you can never unsee it. Awareness is your shield. Clarity is your freedom. And the moment you understand how manipulation works, you become someone no one can quietly control again. Remember this. You don't escape manipulation by fighting the manipulator. You escape by returning to yourself. Your voice, your boundaries, your truth. If this episode opened your eyes, if it made you rethink a relationship, a pattern, a behavior, or a feeling you've been carrying for too long, then make a choice right now to protect your mind moving forward. Hit the like button, share this video with someone who needs it, and subscribe to Truth so we can continue exposing the shadows that shape the human mind. This is where awareness begins, this is where control ends, and this is truth.